screen, I have this article I pulled up on head coverings, and I've been doing a little poking around. I poke around every day pretty much. I poke around on different sites to get different ideas and different viewpoints all over the world. So I did make some comments in some of my previous videos on head coverings, and I made reference to Middle East, and not that that's a bad thing, but I wanted to know more about head coverings. And I know as an ex-Jehovah's Witness, the Jehovah's Witnesses follow the Bible, and in the Bible, Paul gave instructions on head coverings and when women should and shouldn't use head coverings. So that's different from this question is why? Because of the angels, the sons of God. So if you remember the question or the situation where the some of the angels forsook their position in heaven, they became fallen angels, and they came to the earth, and they took up marriages with women. They had relations with women, and the offspring were the Nephilim, and then that's why God had to bring the flood. That's kind of the short story. So, as ex Jehovah's Witnesses, we all know that story. We all believe it because it's in the Bible. And when you look a little further and you look at the book of Enoch, and I've been poking around there at some of that stuff, it really gets into these fallen angels, and it gives them certain names, Anunnaki, or I don't get the names right, but it's interesting. So, but I thought I wanted to get more information on head coverings, because as you research that, they say, well, the reason the women had head coverings is the men at that time were afraid for their women, and the fallen angels were attracted to the women with their long hair and whatever. So they told the women to wear head coverings. This is apparently the story. And this is where head coverings came from, because of these fallen angels. So this is a good article. I recommend you go and look at it if you have an interest. I just Googled it, and it's headcoveringmovement.com, theheadcoveringmovement.com. So they're very intelligent people that put this website together. The research in here is impeccable, really good research. I'd recommend, if this subject interests you, read this article. But the long and the short of it is, I'll look at their conclusion. I thought it was interesting. Though this view has a long history going back to Tertullian in the 2nd century, we believe it cannot stand up to biblical scrutiny. Here's some problems we see with this theory. So what they're talking about is that head coverings were introduced because of those fallen angels. So that means the women would have to always wear head coverings, kind of like in the Middle East. But we're going to look here, and it was different in the Bible. So here, point number one, the sons of God theory treats head coverings as an exclusively female issue. However, Paul says this is a symbol for both genders. Women are to have a covered head, and men are to have an uncovered head. So if a woman covering keeps her from being lusted by the demons, how does that explain why men must have nothing on their heads? So yeah, we debunk that. We agree with that. If a head covering kept a woman modest so that the fallen angels would not lust after them, we'd expect Paul to say it needs to be practiced at all times. I agree with that. That makes sense. After all, lust can happen whenever one is seen. Paul instead only tells women to cover up when praying and prophesying. Even if this symbol is not limited to church gatherings, he is still not telling women to be covered at all times or whenever they're in public. Head covering was only practiced by believers after Christ came to earth. Interesting. Nowhere in the Old Testament were women commanded to keep their heads covered. Once again, if head coverings kept angels from lusting after women, we'd expect God to have told women in the Old Testament to cover their heads as well. It's unthinkable that God would not tell women how they can protect themselves from the impure demonic encounters, if that's what the covering does. So I agree with that. That debunks that. Number 4, head covering does not turn a beautiful woman into a non-beautiful woman. A simple scarf or a veil over one's head does not keep anything from recognizing that the daughter of men are beautiful. Nor does it take away from the desire to take one as a wife, like the sons of God did in Genesis 6 and 2. If you practiced head covering before you got married, your husband will be able to attest to this. I agree with that. Debunked. Number 5, most Christian women in the 21st century pray uncovered. If the reason why women must cover their heads was for their protection from fallen angels, we'd expect to hear of many uncovered women having encounters with fallen angels. We know that this is not the case. The fact that there isn't any real threat shows that this wasn't what Paul meant. So, and that's kind of where it leaves it. It was just something Paul implemented. It came after, like Jesus died. Paul was like 40 years later or something. So it's all interesting. I still stick to my theory that it was just at the time, the age, and this article doesn't covering it. It's just debunking the fact were head coverings brought in because of fallen angels. This article says no, because the head coverings came in later. Paul brought this whole ruling in, and maybe it was something Paul was kind of an authoritarian or kind of a male kind of, we call him a male chauvinist today. No one wants to call St. Paul or Paul that because he wrote half of the New Testament. He was inspired directly by Christ. So I just read the Bible, and but in today's world, I agree that women can pray. Women pray without head coverings. Women teach without head coverings in today's world, and I think today's world is different from Paul's world. So I think Paul was setting up like a headship situation where the man was superior. But today, that's kind of done away with. That's old school. That's first century. So I think when we look at Jesus left us with the command of love, and I think if we re-examine this command of love, and also God said that God is not partial. He said that all people are equal in his eyes, male, female, whatever race, nationality, whatever religion. God is there for all people. So I have to look at this, at all the people that come online and say, well, the Jehovah's Witnesses is the only way. God only had one truth. This is all. That's a Rutherford teaching. I don't buy that anymore. I don't buy that anymore. And it is a better feeling not to have that behind you, because then you have to defend it. If you figure you have the only truth and there's no other way, then it's a lot of pressure, and you can't defend it. There's no way to defend it. The Rutherford trance does not defend that. The Jehovah's Witness, they read the Bible. It's a very judgmental. The fact that I get people coming online judging me for what I'm trying to do, it's a judgmental religion. I expect that. I expect the judgments because I'm talking to this community, and I know there's a lot of JWs looking online and looking at these videos, and that's good. I think they should. It should open their minds up to a lot of the Rutherford trance. But to say that it's the only religion, it's just a speck on the wall. It's just like a little fly on the wall in the big scheme of things. The world's a big place, and there's only a few Jehovah's Witnesses, but they think that they're the only ones, just like the nation of Israel was the only ones, just like the ark, Noah was the only ones. They feel that God always had this only one. But yet Jesus died for everyone. So yeah, God did have kind of a channel. Noah, the Jews came out of Egypt, and God had that. But then remember, Jesus came and he says, we're going to preach first to the Jews, to his home territory, basically, and then he says we're going to turn our attention to who? To you and me, to the nations, to the whole world. So no longer is this a very singular religion one way, but Jesus says we're looking at the whole world. So that changes it for anybody that thinks that they have the only truth, the only way. And Paul also said we just see a hazy outline. And I'm always going to go back to that scripture because it's there. It's the very guy that did it. So he's the guy that brought in the head coverings, and he's the guy that says he only sees a hazy outline, as if looking through a metal mirror. So at his time, when he wrote these books, head coverings made sense. because maybe there was a real big issue in that time with this male chauvinism going on, and we know that in our time, women just recently got rights to vote, maybe 50 years ago, or maybe a little longer, but not long ago. So we know that there has been this problem on earth for 2,000 years. And we know that Jesus first appeared to the women when he was resurrected. It was always the women, and it was the women that followed him around, and it was the women that he was in tune with. So he knew that the women were valuable, but he was in a time era that, you might get killed a little earlier if you spoke out too much. I don't know. But I didn't hear Jesus making anybody wear head coverings. None of that. We were not taught that by Jesus. That was Paul. And he brought that in. And I believe he brought that in because it was an issue back then. And he brought that in. So is it an issue today? No, I don't see an issue unless you want to make it an issue. So that's my 2 bits. And until next time, guys, I hoped we covered this a little better, this head covering thing. I hate to throw out and make head coverings look bad. But when we go all over the earth, it helps us to be tolerant to all the other religions and all the other faiths, and to be tolerant even to the Jehovah's Witnesses that believe in head coverings, and the women in the congregations wear head coverings. So we as ex-Jehovah's Witnesses, we can be tolerant to all of these things, because in the big scheme of things, it really does not matter. It doesn't matter. Love your neighbor. That's what Jesus said. Okay, guys, until next time, live your life with love. Bye now.